What if everything that seemed solid was, little by little, losing its consistency? What if that feeling of floating between two worlds, no longer in the old, but not yet quite in the new, was actually a sign that your consciousness had just crossed a point of no return? Maybe you're there, silently, trying to pretend to be normal, but inside you, something started to vibrate differently. A part of you, subtle but undeniable, you have already noticed. Nothing will be the same again. The faces remain the same, the conversations sound the same, but something behind the scenes of reality is moving, as if the stage where life happens is beginning to reveal its invisible threads. And the most curious thing, you always felt this was going to happen, but I never knew how to explain what or when or why, until now. There is a phase in awakening when everything around you starts to sound false. Not because the world has changed, but because your eyes have changed. People's words sound like memorized scripts, the interactions predictable, the routine almost a poorly rehearsed loop. You observe, but it feels like you're watching from the outside, as if your body was here, but your soul no longer. This phenomenon has a name. In psychology, they call it derealization. But what few understand is that in many cases, this isn't a collapse. It's clairvoyance. This is when consciousness begins to detach itself from the collective script of the matrix. That's when you start to see behind the scenes, where time is malleable, matter is code, and reality is an interactive hologram. Joe Dispenza calls this neural deconditioning. When you stop reacting automatically to the world and start observing it from a new state of being, a state that is still strange, yet deeply familiar. And in that place, the first discomfort arises, because no one taught us that waking up hurts, that seeing too much confuses. Coming out of collective hypnosis may seem at first like losing your sanity, but here's the truth. You're not going crazy. You are freeing yourself from the illusion. Breathe, close your eyes, feel the air coming in. Maybe you still can't explain it, but your body already knows. You're starting to remember. There's a phase in awakening when everything around you starts to sound false. Not because the world has changed, but because your eyes have changed. People's words sound like memorized scripts, the interactions predictable, the routine almost a poorly rehearsed loop. You observe, but it feels like you're watching from the outside, as if your body was here, but your soul no longer. This phenomenon has a name. In psychology, they call it derealization. But what few understand is that in many cases, this isn't a collapse. It's clairvoyance. This is when consciousness begins to detach itself from the collective script of the matrix. That's when you start to see behind the scenes, where time is malleable, matter is code, and reality is an interactive hologram. Joe Dispenza calls this neural deconditioning. When you stop reacting automatically to the world and start observing it from a new state of being, a state that is still strange, yet deeply familiar. And in that place, the first discomfort arises, because no one taught us that waking up hurts, that seeing too much confuses. Coming out of collective hypnosis may seem at first like losing your sanity, but here's the truth. You're not going crazy. You are freeing yourself from the illusion. Breathe, close your eyes, feel the air coming in. Maybe you still can't explain it, but your body already knows. You're starting to remember. Most people believe that spiritual awakening is a gentle light, a breath of peace, a clear epiphany that organizes everything. But there is a kind of awakening that starts the other way around. One that does not illuminate, collapses. That which does not organize, it destructures. Who does not respond, remains silent. It's when you look around and nothing seems to fit anymore. Relationships begin to deteriorate for no apparent reason. Projects lose their meaning. Goals that once moved you now seem empty, and you try to resist, try to keep everything as it was. But life, subtly and relentlessly, begins to fall apart. Not with great tragedies, but with a succession of small breaks that force you to stop, look, and feel. And what nobody tells you is that that's a good sign. On an energetic level, this process is a reconfiguration of coherence. Anything that does not vibrate at its new frequency inevitably begins to lose stability. Not because you failed, but because the new version of you cannot inhabit the same field as before. Joe Dispenza talks about the nervous system as the main transmitter of our reality. When you begin to alter your patterns of thought, emotion, and presence, your nervous system emits different signals. And the field, the quantum environment around you, begins to respond. But before responding with new results, he responds by dismantling what was incoherent. It is the so-called period of creative chaos, an interval where the old collapses but the new has not yet landed. A vacuum, an interval, a place where you are no longer who you were, but you don't yet know who you are becoming. During this interval, your brain's reticular system goes on alert. Begin to filter the world from instability. Dopamine gets dysregulated. The limbic system, which governs your emotional responses, goes into recalibration, and the body feels all of this. You feel more tired, more vulnerable, sometimes anxious, other times completely apathetic. But this is not a failure. It is an expansion. Think of an old house being renovated. You can't just paint the walls. It is necessary to break, expose, remake. And for a while, it looks like a mess. It seems like everything has gotten worse. But it is at this very stage that the real transformation is happening. Your soul is rebuilding the foundations, not just changing what you do, but rewriting who you are. And this rewriting does not happen calmly. It happens with fire. It collapses, with silent ruptures that make you wonder if you've lost your way. But here's the key. Collapse is not a punishment. It's an invitation. Chaos is not failure. It is a transition. Deconstruction is not the end. It is alignment. Everything that wasn't true is falling away. Everything that was held together by fear is being dissolved. And everything that was you trying to fit into a space that was too small is finally breaking apart. Breathe. Maybe you can still see the rubble, but if you look with different eyes, you will realize this mess is the exact opening through which the new reality will enter. And when she arrives, you will no longer try to understand. It will just recognize that was it. That was always it. You wake up tired even after sleeping. Your body feels heavy. Your mind is scrambled. Simple things become complex. Motivation evaporates without logical explanation. Sometimes you feel like you're falling apart inside, but there is no fever. There is no test that can detect it. And then someone says, it's burnout. Or do you think yourself, could it be depression? Could I be sick? But what if I told you what you are experiencing? It's not a collapse, it's a crossing. There is a stage of spiritual awakening where the body becomes the most visible stage of transformation. Not because he is failing, but because he is trying to keep up with the soul that has begun to vibrate in another dimension. The quantum leap is not a pretty metaphor. It is a real process of energetic recalibration. And the body, this magnificent antenna that you inhabit, needs to translate each new vibrational information into biochemical, hormonal, and neurological terms. Joe Dispenza explains that when we access higher states of consciousness, whether through meditation, deep insight, or transformative pain, our brain begins to emit different wave patterns. It moves from accelerated beta to fluctuating between alpha, theta, and even gamma. These subtler waves generate profound physiological effects. Cortisol production, the stress hormone, begins to fluctuate. The endocrine system, which regulates your vital energy, is experiencing instability. The sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems try to rebalance themselves, sometimes hyperactive, sometimes in collapse. Result: feelings of exhaustion, hypersensitivity, mental confusion, unexplained crying spells, or deep silence. But this is not a disease. It is download, yes. Your body is receiving, integrating, and trying to stabilize new frequencies. And like any system being updated, it needs time, care, and commitment. But we have been taught to be suspicious of what we do not understand, pathologizing the mystery, calling weakness what may actually be a sacred reconfiguration. So you try to resist, try to maintain productivity, force the agenda, but the soul doesn't want speed anymore. She wants integration. That's why you feel out of step with the world, because the world still lives at the pace of the machine, but his soul already moves to the beat of the field. And in this new rhythm, tiredness is not an obstacle. It's an oracle. He tells you, pause, breathe, sit. Don't rush to return to normality because it was normal that made you sick. You are not breaking. It is rebuilding itself on another frequency. And yes, this frequency is lighter, more subtle, more aligned. But before you can fully access it, you need to release the waste from the old version. And where are these residues accumulated? In the body. in the muscles, in the glands, in the synapses, in the electromagnetic field that surrounds you. So yes, maybe you need more sleep, or retreat for days, or get away from noise, screens, empty conversations. This is not isolation. It's energetic protection. You are caring for the temple where your new consciousness will dwell. Breathe. Place your hand on your chest now, right in the center, and say calmly, silently to yourself, it's not a weakness, it's a transition. My body is following my soul. I allow myself to live this rebirth with presence and kindness. Because when this process is over, you will not be the same. And the world, even though it seems the same, will respond differently. Because now you will be vibrating with the invisible, will be translating the field. You will be living from a place where the body is not a prison, but a portal. You've always been told you were too sensitive. I cried over little things. I could feel the weight of the surroundings before anyone even spoke. He absorbed the discomfort of others as if it were his own. Sometimes all you had to do was walk into a place and something inside you knew. Something was out of place here. Maybe, for a long time, you thought this was a flaw, something to be tamed, hardened, corrected. Because in a world that values logic and performance, those who feel too much are easily discredited. But what if I told you that this sensitivity you always tried to hide, is it precisely the gift that allows you to cross dimensions? Hypersensitivity is not an exaggeration. It is expanded perception. It is the natural instrument of those who are awakening to subtle realities, realities that cannot be measured, but rather felt. And feeling, in this case, is not weakness. It's a neuroenergetic superpower. Psychologist Elaine Aron, a pioneer in the study of the highly sensitive, revealed that approximately 15 to 20% of the population has a nervous system that is more responsive to internal and external stimuli. But what their studies don't say, and the quantum field confirms, is that this sensitivity is also a spiritual antenna, a radar for the invisible. When your consciousness expands, your body becomes a living interface between dimensions, and the nervous system is the main translator of this communication, i.e., if the field vibrates differently, you feel it. If a person is disconnected from themselves, you pick up on it. If a situation feels energetically off, your body lets you know, with palpitations, tension, discomfort, or even nausea. You feel too much because you're picking up codes that others haven't yet learned to read. And yes, it is tiring. Sometimes exhausting, because you can't turn off that antenna. But it is possible to learn to tune it wisely. While the world says, you're dramatic, the soul responds, you are a frequency transducer. While the world demands, be stronger, the soul whispers, your strength lies in your refined sensitivity. And this sensitivity, when welcomed, becomes direction. She shows you who is truly there. It protects you from dense environments. It guides you in subtle decisions that logic would never understand. So waking up doesn't make you colder, it makes you softer, more transparent, more in tune with the language of the field. Joe Dispenza reminds us that the mind coherent with the heart creates reality, but it is the heart, that center of electromagnetic sensitivity, that reads the field before the mind understands. The heart feels first, and you feel through it. You don't need to justify yourself anymore. Don't even explain yourself. Don't even try to appear less intense to be accepted. You have been calibrated to navigate worlds, and this calibration happens through feeling. So instead of suppressing it, breathe with it. Recognize this sensitivity is an ancestral gift. It connects you with subtle planes. She is your vibrational GPS. And the next time someone says, you are too sensitive, just smile. And remember, too sensitive to live in a lie. Sensitive enough to sustain the invisible. How many times have you postponed your step? Not out of open fear, but out of an argument too subtle to be disputed. I'm not ready yet. And then you went back to studying some more, reading another book, looking for more signals, more permissions, more external validations. Because somehow, I believed that I could only begin to live my truth when I was 100% aligned, healed, whole. But here's the most dangerous trap of all, the spiritualization of self-sabotage, the ego dressed in humility, insecurity disguised as wisdom. Have you ever noticed how that almost done feeling never goes away? How does she adapt to each new level? How does she change her argument but keep the same effect, paralyzing you? This happens because there is a part of you that still identifies with the seeker and not with the transmitter, with the process, but not with the presence, with becoming, but not with already am. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of the journey. But there comes a time, a vibrational tipping point, where continuing to search becomes a subtle form of escape. It's what Joe Dispenza calls unconscious self-image shaped by emotional memories. Even when you access new information, if the predominant emotion is doubt, the field will continue to respond to that frequency. Because the field doesn't read your words, it reads your energy. And if your energy says, "I am not yet," then the field gives you more waiting, more delay, more mirrors of unreadiness. This is the Galatea effect in action, a psychological principle that shows that we tend to behave and manifest according to the image we hold of ourselves, i.e., it's not the world that's on pause. It is your vibration that has not yet allowed itself to be seen. And here's the paradox. You feel humble to recognize that you still have a lot to learn, but often this is just fear of putting yourself out there. Fear of being wrong while being truthful. Fear of losing control of the perfect narrative about who you should be. But the soul does not want perfection. She wants presence. She doesn't want a 100% ready version. She wants a 100% delivered version. Because in quantum, the real power is not in being ready. It's about being available. And availability cannot be trained. It is allowed. When you let go of the "when I'm more evolved" narrative, you create space for the now to act. And in that space, something bigger can inhabit you. Something that does not come from the mind, but from the field. Breathe. Close your eyes. Feel this phrase as code, not advice. You don't need to know everything to be everything you already are. This is the code of remembrance. And by remembering, you reposition yourself, not as a student, but as a living expression of learning. You stop studying light, and it starts to be the crack through which it enters. You don't notice the exact moment the sun rises, but suddenly the darkness no longer dominates. The light arrives like this, silent, gradual, inevitable. This is exactly how your reality begins to change when your internal frequency shifts. No fireworks, no formal announcement, but with signs, subtle, mysterious, constant, that you may still be ignoring. How many times have you thought about someone and that person sent you a message? Or did you feel a calling to go to a place, and there you found the answer you've been looking for weeks? Or looked at the clock for no reason and saw 11:11, 22:22, 5:55? Coincidence? No more. These small events, so subtle they almost go unnoticed, are the symbolic language of the field. They are the quantum way of saying, "You're on the right path, keep going." Joe Dispenza explains that by elevating our emotional state, by inhabiting emotions like gratitude, presence, love, and surrender, we begin to emit an energetic signature compatible with possibilities that already exist in the quantum field. We don't create from scratch. We tune in to what already vibrates. And once this attunement happens, external reality begins to respond. Not with great miracles immediately, but with micro adjustments that only an attentive heart is capable of perceiving. The problem is, you still don't trust. Your mind is still addicted to the search for big proof. Expect confirmation in contracts, radical changes, measurable results. But the field doesn't respond with spectacle. It responds with synchrony. The question is not, is it working? But yes, are you present enough to notice? Because the signs don't appear to convince you. They come to line up. And each time you acknowledge one of them with gratitude, you anchor that new frequency more strongly. Look, the repeating number isn't just a pattern, it's a vibrational password. The unexpected encounter isn't random, it's a bridge between versions of you. Accurate intuition isn't a guess, it's a memory of the future. But none of this will have any effect if you continue to doubt what you feel. You're so used to protecting yourself from disappointment that you've learned to distrust even real magic. But the manifestation is like a mirror. If you hesitate, she hesitates. If you believe, it blooms. And no, it's not about blind belief, it's about vibrational coherence. Greg Braden teaches that the heart in coherence creates a magnetic field that literally rearranges the matter around it. In other words, the universe does not respond to what you think, but to what you and. So stop for a moment. Mentally go back to that time when everything flowed without explanation. That spontaneous choice that led to the best path. That coincidence that seemed impossible. Feel it in your body, in the chest, in the stomach. Do you recognize it? You are already experiencing signs of the new reality. What is missing is not a demonstration, it's recognition. The field has already responded, but maybe you're still waiting for the answer to come packaged in the old format, with the face of logic, with the signature of security. But quantum has another aesthetic. He dances with doubt until you choose trust. Breathe. Allow yourself to recognize, I'm already vibrating differently, and reality has already started to respond to me. You learn that to achieve something, it takes effort, focus, strategy, insistence. The old matrix taught you to seek, plan, execute, and repeat until it works. Until one day, after so many attempts, something breaks. But not out there. Inside. What breaks is your relationship with control. It is the ego exhausted from trying to control what was never under its control. It's the body tired of living in continuous tension, as if reality could only happen if you forced the door to the future. And then for the first time, you let go. Not by high choice, but by surrender. Because he no longer has the strength to insist, because the fight has lost its meaning. And it is precisely at this point, at the moment of actual delivery, that something surprising happens. Reality starts to hit you, not with the exact contours you imagined, not with the idealized look of your vision boards, but with a vibrational precision so intimate that only your soul recognizes it. This is the quantum paradox of expansion. You don't get it when you chase after it. You receive when given. Joe Dispenza teaches that the mind alone creates only intention, but it is the body, vibrating with heightened emotions, that magnetizes the experience. And these emotions are not born of effort. They blossom from surrender. Surrendering in this context is not giving up, it's getting out of the way. It is giving up control to allow the field to act on its own intelligence. But the mind resists, because letting go seems dangerous, it seems irresponsible, seems to lose control. And that's where the mistake lies. You don't let go of drift. You let go to get into the flow. Think about it. Water finds its way not because it pushes, but because it seeds. It contours, flows, adapts, and arrives. So it is with energy when you allow it to flow through you, instead of trying to direct it with the power of your mind. Expansion doesn't happen because you conquered it. It happens because you have cleared the internal space that was preventing you from receiving. And yes, sometimes what arrives is very different from what you expected, because the field does not respond to your childish desires. It responds to your actual frequency. And often your frequency wants things that your mind hasn't even learned to desire yet. That's why when you let go, you don't get more of the same. Receive what is necessary. Receive coherent. Receive what repositions you in the truth. And at the same time, he begins to notice something even more subtle. What you thought you wanted was just a symbol. What you really seek is a state, peace, presence, wholeness, freedom. And all of this is already available, not as a goal, but as a vibration. You don't need to run after it, you need to align. Take a deep breath now. Release the air as if releasing an old weight, and recognizes, the more I let go, the more I receive, but not with my hands, with my heart. There is a sacred moment in the spiritual journey when the question ceases. Not because all the answers have arrived, but because something inside you remembered. He remembered that he already knew. He remembered that he no longer needed to look outside for what had always been vibrating inside. He remembered that the search was just a mirror to mature his presence. This is the moment when the seeker gives way to the transmitter, when you stop trying to understand the light, and it begins to be the frequency itself that illuminates. But what does this mean in practice? It means that the information is no longer sufficient. You can learn about quantum laws, quote Neville Goddard, and understand the foundations of neuroplasticity with Joe Dispenza. But if this is not embodied, it remains only a concept. To embody is the opposite of to accumulate. It's simplifying. It's when what you know finally finds a place in what you feel an end. When learning ceases to be external and becomes stabilized vibration. But for this to happen, there is an essential movement. You need to get out of your head and down into your body. The body is the altar. It is there that the new identity needs to be felt, breathed, repeated. Dr. Joe shows us that creating a new reality requires to be the future before seeing it manifested. This is why he emphasizes practice so much. Coherent breathing, active visualization, intentionally heightened emotions, and not as isolated techniques, but as anchoring rituals. Because at its core, every true spiritual practice serves one purpose. Remember who you already are until it becomes non-negotiable. Conscious breathing teaches you to regulate the vibration of the moment. Active visualization repositions you in the realm of possibilities. And neuro-emotional anchoring turns this into a new baseline of identity, i.e., you stop trying to vibrate something new, and you start to naturally vibrate the frequency of your expanded version. This is how manifestation ceases to be effort and becomes expression. You no longer need to hold up long affirmations, lists of goals, or vision boards taped to the wall. You and the vision, you and a meta, you and the frequency. And that changes everything, because the world starts to react not to what you ask, but to what you transmit. People feel, even without understanding. Situations flow, even without planning. Life responds, even without you having to insist. And there is no longer any separation between spirituality and everyday life. You become living spirituality, in the supermarket queue, in the silence of a cafe, in the simplest conversation. Your presence begins to be the teaching. Your energy begins to be the portal. Breathe with that. Quiet down a bit now. Feel in your body the frequency you have just been trying to reach. She's already here. She is already you. Because when the seeker becomes still, the transmitter wakes up, and in that awakening, you no longer need to prove anything. You spent years trying to understand. He sought meaning in words, in books, in teachers. I wanted to understand the reason for the pain, the logic of the cycles, the purpose of everything. But it got here. And now, maybe you're starting to realize it's not about understanding, it's about remembering. Because the mind wants control, but the soul wants truth. And the truth often cannot be explained, only experienced. There is a greater intelligence that guides you even in silence, even in absences, even in the moments when everything seemed wrong. This intelligence, which some call the field, others call consciousness, source, God, doesn't want you to understand every detail. He just wants you to feel what you always knew again. She speaks silently, moves in symbols. It acts on the flows that your mind cannot organize, but that your heart immediately recognizes. Greg Braden reminds us that the heart is the first organ to form in the embryo, even before the brain, and that the heart has an electromagnetic field 5,000 times stronger than that of the brain. This means something profound. You came into the world not to think about your existence, but corroborate it. And when your vibration is in coherence with who you really are, the entire universe responds. But he responds in his original language, that of memory. Remembering is not going back to the past. It is repositioning yourself at the center of your essence. It's when you feel that behind the pain, there is direction. Behind the absence, there was alignment. Behind the waiting, there was preparation. And it is at that moment that everything changes. Not because the world has changed, but because your presence has changed within the world. You don't want to understand the plan anymore. He wants to embody the plan. You want to live the frequency rather than just wish for it. You want to be the vibration, not just study it. And that's where the real leap happens. One who cannot be measured by numbers, diplomas, or followers, but which is revealed in the subtle sparkle of the eyes, in the silent firmness of inner peace, in the gentle certainty that you came home. Not a physical house, but the vibrational home of your own truth. Breathe. Maybe you still have questions. I still feel insecure. All good. The call the universe makes now does not require perfection, only presence. You are not being called to do more. You are being called to remember who you are. And when you remember, not everything will change from the outside in, but everything will be reorganized from the inside out, because in the end, you are not waking up, you are coming home. Maybe nothing will change when the video ends. You will still be in the same house, with the same furniture, with the same routine for tomorrow. But inside, a portal was touched. An ancient and sacred space within you has been remembered, not with words, but with vibration. and this memory can no longer be forgotten. You don't have to make a decision now. There is no need to act differently, nor rush to change your life. The only thing your soul asks of you is hold that frequency for a little longer. One more moment of presence, another moment of confidence, another everyday gesture with expanded awareness. Because that's how everything changes. Not with big leaps, but with small, coherent vibrations sustained over time. You don't need to chase after what is already you. You just need to stop doubting what vibrates with truth inside. The consciousness you seek is the same one that searches for itself through you. So now, take a deep breath, silence, sit down, and if you really gave yourself up, who would you become?